Gentlemen, we're going live.
Live.
So whatever you say will be held against you in the court of public opinion. Not in the court of law, just in the court of public opinion. We're going to give it a moment here to share on all the platforms.
You want to hear some good news?
You have good news? I always want to hear good news.
Yeah. The University of Montana State University girls won the championship in basketball.
Mazel tov. How did you know, Chagai, that on the list of all you have a grandchild on the team?
No,
Stam, you know this information?
it was on TV. That's why.
Okay. Congratulations to the MSU basketball team. Michael Choyel, they should go from strength to strength. I'm not even sure how to respond to it, Chagai. I just don't know what to do with that information. I'm assuming it's good for Montana, so let's go. Yay. Yay, women's basketball team.
Well, you
I
can't
think
know
my kids
everything.
go. I think Longfellow takes the kids every year, once a year, to the women's basketball game. So I'm glad they won. Maybe Hanalea and Zizi were cheering for them or something. Okay, I'm just sharing this on a few more platforms. Good evening, Kayla Gittel. Good to see you. Mitchell should be knocking on the window any minute. That's his custom. Okay, I got one more platform to share it on, and then we're going to have a lot of fun with Purim today. Okay. Good evening, Carmen. L'chaim, Caleb Gittel to you too. Okay. He's here. Wow, Mashiach Tzaitin. I said Mitchell that I said no. Let them know Mitchell's going to be at the window in a minute. So, okay. So we gotta have a little chat about Purim. We're 24 hours away, well, 25 hours away from Purim. For those of you that are in Bozeman, tomorrow night, Thursday night at 8:00. There was an email today for those that don't see their email. At 8:00, we're going to gather here for the reading of the Megillah after the fast. The fast starts tomorrow morning. The fast of Esther starts at 5:57 a.m. So for the early risers like myself, you get up, have a little breakfast, a cup of coffee, special prayers that we do in the slichot, the supplication prayers. In the morning service, you'll see in the prayer book, there's special supplication prayers for the fast of Esther. You can see it in the back of the blue siddur, or whatever siddur you have. The fast ends in Bozeman at 8:02. We'll gather here at 8:00 to read the Megillah. 2 yeshiva students are flying in tomorrow. So maybe this year they'll read the Megillah. I take it as after 18 years, I'll tell them they have to do it in the same speed. And then, of course, Friday is Purim. So we need to talk about Purim. And I've said this forever, that Purim is a yontif, right? If you take Hanukkah, of course, there's a lot to talk about Hanukkah. There always is. I can give at least a couple decades worth of classes. But Purim, the layers to the story, the 10 chapters of the scroll of Esther of the Megillah are something else. I mean, it's really another world. The layers to the story, and every time you go just a little deeper and actually just spend time reading the verses a little slower, to your point, Baruch, it opens up new information about what really transpired here in the story. And the fascinating thing is that the scroll of Esther is one of 2 books in the entire Tanakh that doesn't have Hashem's name in it. There's no God in it. Because it's very easy to be convinced that it was all just political drama. You know, this one knew this one, and this one's connected here, and Harvaina was wonderful, and Bigson and Seresh were just dummies, and that's why they got caught. And the whole thing, you could play it out as if it was just, political luck. And that's the beauty of it. That if you just dig a little deeper, like I said, Shabbos and Shul, if you want to find the hiddenness of the beauty of the story, you find it by digging deeper. And there's an entire tractate of the Gemara of the Talmud called Megillah. It's not a long tractate. It's one of the tractates. It's about Purim, but primarily about the laws of when you read the Megillah, how you read the Megillah, etc. I don't know if you know this, but in cities that are surrounded by walls in the days of Joshua, the days of Yeshua ben Nun, so any city in the land of Israel that was or elsewhere that was surrounded by a walled city back then, reads the Megillah on a different day. Because if you look at the end in chapter 9 of the Megillah, it says that because Shushan, the capital city, was a walled city. So everyone that was living in the regular cities read it on the 14th day, and they did Purim on the 15th day. So in Yerushalayim, till today, this is called the Purim HaMashulish. I don't know if you know, my father's in Yerushalayim. He just landed there today, back to Israel. So Thursday is going to be the fast of Esther. Friday, you're going to do some of the customs of Purim, most of them not. Shabbos, because it's actually the 15th, in Yerushalayim, they're going to say the Ba'al HaNisim prayer in the Amidah, as if it's Purim. And on Sundays, when they're going to hear the Megillah, give the Shalach Manas and the gifts to the poor. So it's called the 3-day Purim, because they go from Thursday night all the way till Sunday night with various parts. That's only in certain, primarily Yerushalayim, maybe Tiberias also, but it's very few places that do that. That was all just a commercial message of some preliminary Purim information.
How easy read?
Well, one day, I mean. So I want to go back. I want to focus today on the different approaches between Esther and Mordechai and how to deal with the ensuing decree that was going to annihilate the Jewish people that Haman brought about. So Haman comes with cash, like all good anti-Semites. He offers another anti-Semite, Achashverosh. You know, Achashverosh on a good day, he was wicked. He was an evil person, right? He killed his own wife, Vashti. He made her perform naked in front of the whole banquet, the ballroom. He was a psycho. He made a party for 180 days. Even the crazy people in this country don't do it for 180 days. He was a real nut. And tends to be that nuts end up in power. Remember Gaddafi in Libya? We could discuss later whether we did good or bad in Libya. You know, it was parshas and parshas we had. But as a leader, the guy was psycho. He was just not a well person. You hear his speeches, you're cuckoo. You're talking about a crazy person. Like Saddam Hussein and his Baghdad Bob. Achashverosh wasn't well. And it says he was a shaita. He was just stupid. He was a fool. So when you take a fool and give him power, or a fool takes power, right? Remember, Vashti was the one that brought him into power. She was a descendant of the previous king, you know, and so he never belonged in there. He tagged on to the kingship. He married into royalty, became the king, and all hell broke loose. But he makes a party. And what did it take for Haman to convince him to make a decree to annihilate the Jews? 10,000 silver coins. I'll give you. Here's some money. Let me bribe you to just sign off on this. I got to get rid of the Jews. No problem. But the Gemara, the Talmud asks an amazing question. Why did the Jews deserve to be annihilated? Forget about, obviously they were saved at the end. But why did God allow Haman to make the decree in the first place? What was their sin that was so bad that it was worthy of them being annihilated?
Did he offer the money before or after the party?
After, but I'm saying, what does that have to do with the question of the Gemara? Huh?
That was Mordechai not bowing.
Mordechai not bow. That's what made him nervous.
Okay.
No, but why did Mordechai got rewarded for that? It was the most beautiful part of the story. And it's an incredible lesson. I'm glad you mentioned it. It's an incredible lesson for us today that when the Hamans of the world threaten us or try to scare us, the last thing you do is you bow to them. You stand proud, you stand comfortable in your Jewish skin. You imagine Haman going in and out of the palace every day, and there's one Jewish guy who won't bow to him. Now, a normal Haman would say, whatever, so it's one stupid Jew that doesn't bow to me. Haman couldn't handle it. It hit him at his core. The anti-Semite is so psycho that one Jew not bowing to them makes them crazy. And Mordechai knew that because he knew the hatred wasn't logical. So by Mordechai standing and everyone's bowing, including Jews, everyone's bowing. Mordechai is marching, Haman's marching by, and Mordechai doesn't bow, and it makes him crazy. But why did they deserve the threat of annihilation, the decree in the first place? The Gemara answers it in one short line. Because they went to Achashverosh's banquet and they enjoyed themselves. They went to a wicked king. Let's say they were forced or they felt very compelled due to threats of whatever to go to the king. The king invited everyone. So they went. And that makes them worthy of being killed. So some of the commentators say, yeah, but they went there, they ate non-kosher food, they ate stray food. But actually, if you study the Megillah, right in the beginning in chapter 1, it says that when Achashverosh, when Xerxes made his big his big feast, his banquet, it says, Kirtsoin ish v'ish, he gave food and beverages, each person according to their needs. And it says that he consulted with Haman and Mordechai about what to give to the party, to the particular people. And the Jews were given kosher food and kosher wine. That wasn't Yayin Nezach, that wasn't idolatrous wine. So the Jews are at the party and they're eating kosher food. Going back to the Gemara, why do they deserve to die?
Assimilation.
Close. You're not far off, but to get to the assimilation part, there's
They enjoyed.
oh, what does that mean?
Benefit. Pleasure.
Very good. So the Rebbe, by the way, I wish you guys spoke Yiddish, because I would literally send you a link, because it's on tape. Purim was a weekday, so the Farbrengens of Purim, I think all the Farbrengens, but at least most of them are on tape. Today it's online. You can hear the Rebbe speaking in Yiddish, and the Purim Farbrengens go, 5 hours, 6 hours, with songs in between, but the Rebbe speaking in Yiddish. The passion is incredible. Now on Purim, the Rebbe says l'chaim, not an incredible, not a crazy amount, but enough to change the mode in the room, different than all year round. So there's a little bit of humor with some good sarcasm. It's a Purim Farbrengen is like a lifetime transformation. So 1962, Tafshin Chav Beis on Purim, the Rebbe addressed this point. What's the big deal? So they had enjoyment. Big deal. Are you okay? I know the door is fine. I wonder if you're okay.
You got a blip up for your head.
That's what happens when you go to Iraq and Afghanistan, wherever. The hitting a door is small potatoes. I would be crying right now. So the Rebbe said like this in this Farbrengen, and when I heard the recording, it's incredible. The Rebbe says you got to go to a banquet of idolaters. If you have to go, let's say it's a political event, you have to show up. You have to take the silly picture. But then the Rebbe said in Yiddish, "Aber was hast du another davon? Why are you enjoying it so much?" In other words, where is a Jew finding their pleasure going to Ada's point? Where's your pleasure? You got to take a picture with a politician because it's part of your job, no problem. Why are you so excited? You got to go meet with some psycho because it's going to help the Jewish community, because they'll threaten you if you don't show up, right? The poor Jews that live in Turkey, the Jews that live in Iran today, they got to play along with their governments. And they do it and they smile. But if internally you're actually feeling good about it, what is there to feel good about? That you have to sit at an insane party with a psycho king who's pouring beverages to every single person for 180 days with his naked wife, who he forced to come down, and then he killed her because he got that recommendation. That's who you're enjoying spending your time with? You called it assimilation. It's true. But how you get to assimilation starts at a much more primal issue, which is, where do you find your excitement? One time I was in the White House more than once, but one of the times I was there, someone said to me, "So did you enjoy taking a picture with so-and-so?" I said, "I hope they had more enjoyment taking the picture with me." And it wasn't a president or anything, but I said, I'm a member of the Jewish people. I'm serving Klal Yisrael in Montana. It should be an honor for them to take a picture with the rabbi that represents God. It shouldn't be the other way around. And the minute we forget that, and we're like, look who I got to see today. I got a selfie with, it's all psychological, it's emotional, but it represents something so much deeper. And so you want to know, did the Jews deserve annihilation? They deserved annihilation because they forgot their primary role in this world, which is to be a light into the world, and not to get excited to attend a party with a bunch of lowlifes with no moral compass, without any meaningful accomplishments, just to party and party and party, and there's no substantive experience there. And I mean, I'm telling you, the Rebbe, that Farbrengen, just as a side note, he talked about, I don't know what was going on in the world in 1962. It's what we call BCE, before Chaim's era. We're in 43. We're in 43 CE right now. But in 62, The Rebbe said, kids were coming home from yeshiva, from schools, and the Rebbe said the school, they forced them to memorize Shakespeare. Actually, the term the Rebbe used at that Farbrengen, which is beautiful. That's where you get the Purim. The Rebbe said, Shakespeare, it's Yanander Shikir Agoy. Shakespeare, some other drunken idolater. That's how the Rebbe knew Shakespeare better than all of us. He knew exactly what he was talking about. So the kid comes home and says, I memorized Shakespeare, and the Jewish parents are celebrating. Whoa, Romeo and Juliet, or whatever, But the kid comes home and says, hey, daddy, hey, mom, I memorized 100 pages of the Talmud. The Rebbe said that at the Farbrengen, 100 blatt Gemara, 100 pages of the Talmud, and the parents said, no, it could be 200. Right? They're celebrating their secular genius child, but the same child is trying to impress their parents with their spiritual and religious and Torah scholarship, their accomplishments, and the parents are making no big deal about it because to their neighbors, it's more impressive that the kid knows Shakespeare. What are you going to tell your Gentile neighbor, that your kid knows the Talmud? The answer is yes. My kid came home and knows the Talmud. But that all comes from that inferiority complex that Jews have, that we try not to have, but it comes from that premise of, I want to make sure everyone likes me, and therefore I'm going to sell my soul and find my enjoyment in places that have nothing to do with the values that we represent.
They also have peer pressure.
Who has peer pressure? Everyone in this world has peer pressure. It's not unique to Jews. So have a backbone. And if you don't have one, grow one. They say grow other things. I'm going to say grow a backbone. It's better for a rabbi to use those terms. Grow a pair of backbones. Okay, we'll go with that. But now let's go to the other side of the story. So we know how they ended up in trouble. I want to go to when the problem was starting to be resolved. And Mordechai sends a message to Esther, to the queen, who's his cousin. Bas Doide, she was the daughter of his uncle, so it was his first cousin. He sends a message to Esther through, the guy's name was Hasach. If you read the Megillah, his name is Hatach, Hatach or Hasach, depending on Ashkenazic or Sephardic pronunciation, who we know is Daniel the prophet. Well, the Daniel from the books of the prophets. Daniel himself wasn't a prophet, but he was from the books of the prophets, a leader. The famous Daniel from the lion's den.
Writing.
Yeah, the writing on the wall, which, by the way, had to do with the fall of Vashti's father from the kingship, the grandfather Nebuchadnezzar. Then Daniel goes and tells Esther that Mordechai says that you have to intervene. So she sends a message back to her cousin, and she says, Lech Knois es kol Yehudim, go and gather all the Jews, Hanimtsoyim b'Shushan, that are in the city of Shushan, in the capital city of Shush, v'tzumu alai, and I want you to fast. Esther said, Lech Knois es kol Yehudim, go gather all of the Jews. And in a Farbrengen in 1971, the Rebbe spoke about, right, because it sounds like she could have said, Lech Knois es HaYehudim, go gather the Jews. Why did she emphasize to Mordechai in the message, Lech Knois es kol HaYehudim, all the Jews, as if Mordechai may have thought not to gather all the Jews, and because of her, he's going to decide to gather all of them. Was there a group of Jews that Mordechai thought maybe not to gather, and if it wasn't for Esther, he may have not gathered all the Jews? The Rebbe says, yeah. Esther knew that Mordechai would gather the Jews, but she also knew that he would not choose to gather all of them. Why would she not choose? Why would he not choose to gather all of them? And here's
fucking piece of shit, motherfucker.
no. Someone on our class who didn't realize they were not muted. And yeah, that's a first. Took 18 years for that one. I'll call my therapist right after class to figure out how to recover. And by the way, all of you, it's a lesson for all of you. Make sure to learn the mute button, all right? Anyhow, back to what I was saying. Here we're going to figure out how... how Esther, here we're going to figure out how Esther, the Jewish woman, went above and beyond in a way that only a powerful, courageous Jewish woman would do, knowing the realities of what's going on, and a place that Mordechai wouldn't necessarily go. And what I mean by that is as follows. Again, what I'm sharing with you is from that 1971 Farbrengen of the Rebbe. He says, going back to where we started from the Gemara and Megillah, why did they get into trouble in the first place? Because there were Jews that were literally enjoying and spending time with the idolaters at Achashverosh's party. Which means Mordechai looked at that and said, these guys were so off the beaten path that if we're going to bring them back to get them to do tshuva, to change their ways, we're not going to make them fast now. Right? You can't go that extreme. You can't tell them, hey, you went from eating at a party with a bunch of drunkards, let's go fast. So Mordechai figured he's going to ask most of the Jews to fast, but this group of people, the ones that were on the edges of the community, let's do it a little bit with baby steps, right? We've spoken here many times about doing things with baby steps. So let them eat and drink, but they should do it according to halacha, in the right environment, with the right people. Don't make them go right away to fast and to sort of, abuse their bodies and have such self-sacrifice, because it's going to be too much for them to go from one extreme to the other extreme so quickly. Comes along Queen Esther and says to her cousin, it's a nice idea you have, right? In general, the rule is, like the Rambam says, we just learned it in the Rambam a few days ago, that the middle ground, the middle path is always the best. Extremes are not good. And it's true. Generally in life, the sages have taught us that a person should always choose to go in the middle ground. Meaning, not when it comes to whether you follow God's mitzvahs or not, but how you follow those mitzvahs. Don't be too angry or too easygoing. Be in the middle. Be a sane, balanced individual. Don't be too cheap and don't be too splurging. Don't spend all your money on, for example, tzedakah is one of the examples the Rambam says. Don't give all your money to charity and then become a dependent on the community for charity because you gave all your money to charity. And don't be a cheapie that doesn't give any money to charity. Be in the middle. And Mordechai was going to do that. He's like, for most of the Jews, it's a good idea for them to fast. Because one of the ways we do tshuva, one of the ways we reconnect with God is through fasting and prayer and supplications. And tomorrow we're going to do that. We're going to fast for one day, whatever, for 12 hours or 13 hours. But Mordechai's like, yeah, but there's going to be some Jews that it might not be a good idea. It'll be a much better idea with that group of Jews just to slowly break them in, bring them back to Judaism slowly. And Esther's like, yeah, that's a great idea under normal circumstances. These are not normal circumstances. Everything about what's about to go down, one way or the other. Either we're going to be annihilated, which is obviously a very extreme reality, or somehow we're going to be miraculously saved, which is going to be another extreme reality, going from total decree from a king who put his stamp on annihilation, now it's changing. So Esther says, I want you to go tell my cousin Mordechai that under these circumstances, nothing I'm doing and nothing you guys are doing are going to make sense. Now what I mean by that is it's a fascinating concept. Why was she chosen by Achashverosh as the queen? Her beauty. They had a beauty pageant. She was chosen from the entire kingdom of 127 countries. Obviously, it was ordained by God that she should be in the palace, but she was chosen for her beauty. And she spent 6 months with the perfumers and 6 months with the moisturizers so that when she finally meets the king, she should be perfection. What did she do before she went into the king and hoped that he'll put out his scepter so she could intervene for her people? She fasted for 3 days and 3 nights. And by the way, it was on Pesach. So it was such a severe situation, even though generally on Jewish holidays, we never fast. In that circumstance, she fasted. She was known for her beauty. She was loved, or not loved. I don't know if love was the right word. I don't know if Achashverosh knew what love was. But she was lusted. She was liked for her beauty. and she goes and fasts for 3 days, which affects the way you look and the way you feel. You feel like a shmata, you look like a shmata, and now you're going to see the king, which means she understood that under these circumstances, logic, nature ain't going to play a role here. The only thing that's going to save us here is God. I'm just a messenger. So I'm going to go into the king, despite logic, despite nature. I'm going to fast, which means I'm relying on God, not on my beauty. And somehow, if God wants this to happen, I'm going to do my part, but the king is going to have to put out his scepter and let me in, and then I'll invite him to a meal, and then I'll invite him to a second meal, and eventually I'll tell him who Haman is and what he's trying to do to her people. And she says at that meal eventually, to do what my request is and to do what I want, right? Because there's a guy that wants to eradicate my people. The king says, who is that person? And she goes, Haman Haraza, this Haman guy. But she herself was operating, going against the laws of nature and against logic, because she understood at this pivotal moment in Jewish history that she was there for a reason. And if she connects with God and goes with the power of God and goes with the power of that was invested in her by Hashem, that's how she'll succeed. So when she turns to her, before this, when she sends a message to Mordechai, she's like, no, we're not going with the nature here. Nature would say Mordechai's right. Under normal circumstances, baby steps is the way to go. You want to take a guy or a woman that's partying with Achashverosh and suddenly change them 180? You do that slowly. She said, not now. If I'm going to go fast, right, and I'm going to go identify myself to the king at this point had no idea that she was Jewish. She had kept it a secret. She was doing everything secretly. She was keeping kosher secretly. Everything she was doing was secretly. But she goes, if I'm going to break that secret, and I'm going to walk into Achashverosh, my crazy psycho husband, who has killed his last wife in public, no problems, which means her risk level was pretty high. And I'm going to say that I'm Jewish and this Haman guy is trying to kill me and all my people, then everyone else in the Jewish people better get on my extreme bandwagon, which an extreme over here means there's no room for baby steps. We go Mesiras Nefesh. We go head first. We go into self-sacrifice because that's what's needed right now in this moment. So it may be true, not may be true, it is true that generally in Jewish life, doing extreme things is not healthy. But there are times, small, short moments in time, that's exactly what's needed. You can't think it through too much. Because if you think it through too much, logic will dictate that you shouldn't do it. Not only logic, even halacha might dictate, you're putting your life in danger. And Esther is certainly putting her life in danger, but her people were on the line. And so if she was going to put her life on the line, then Mordechai and the rest of the Jews, including the party Jews that had just come from Cancun from spring break and they were still tipsy, they too had to go straight into fasting because they need to show up in that way, because what ultimately broke the decree was the self-sacrifice of the Jewish people. The Jewish people made a total 180, and it's a big deal because they were not there. Mordechai inspired them, and then Esther inspired Mordechai, and he inspired them to totally return to God. And it's interesting, it doesn't, if you look at as a side note, if you look at the end of the Megillah, right, at the end of the Megillah, when it talks about how they fought and they had to kill 75,000 Gentiles who were trying to kill Jews, so there were 75,000 of them that were killed. And then in in Shushan itself, there was, I want to say a few hundred, maybe. But the point is, there's no mention in the Megillah of even one Jew dying. Not one. How do you kill 75,000 people and not one of the people fighting dies in the process? Exactly. It was this incredible story, and yet God's name is not mentioned. It was all natural. Now, how natural is it when not one person dies and 75,000 on the other side are killed? And that's the beauty of the story of Purim. That the more you dig, verse by verse, inch by inch of the story, what you discover is that the entirety of the story is imbued with God at every step of the way, in every moment, in the most beautiful way. and yet it's not mentioned. Because it's the ultimate, you have a question?
I was wondering, wasn't it, she was hesitant at first, and wasn't it Mordecai that told her that you were here, put here for a reason?
100%.
Yes.
Yeah, so she, in the beginning, Esther was like, are you crazy? I'm gonna go. And he's like, listen, if you don't show up, God will help us a different way. And this will be your moment that will be lost forever. And then she went in full force. That actually emphasizes the point that once she was in, she was in. And she wasn't in halfway. She was in all the way, even more than Mordecai. But how often in life do we go through moments in life saying, oh, God's not here? Just today, I was talking to someone about this. God's not here. Terrible story I was dealing with today at noon. Someone came in to talk about a terrible story that's happening with a relative of theirs, and it's heartbreaking. I know the relative. It's a heartbreaking story. Oh, God willing, it will end well, but right now it ain't well. And this person was telling me that the person that they're talking about has nowhere else to turn, so they turn to God. And they struggled. They weren't always turning to God, but now they're turning to God. And it's true. In life, we tend to turn to God when things are really bad. And we feel like there's nowhere else to turn. But when things are good, we tend to think it all makes perfect sense. But actually, when you start peeling the layers just a little bit, you realize it actually makes no sense. How did you end up exactly where you ended up, in which part of the world? How did you end up in a particular job that you're not sure if you belong there or not? How did you end up with particular children or particular parents or particular spouse? And the list goes on. I went to Walmart yesterday. I hate Walmart. It's a horrible place to hang out. I used to go there a lot when I first moved there. But since they stopped having checkouts and you have to do everything yourself, I don't work in Walmart, so I don't want to do it there. I don't want to, they don't pay me, so I'm not going to check myself out. So I don't go there very much. But I needed some stuff because we donated toys to the hospital today for the children and the pediatric. So I went to buy some toys. But Hashem ordained it. There was 2 checkout aisles that happened to have humans working there. One of them was full, so I went to the next one. And it was a woman that used to work at Honda, so she knew me from back in the day when she worked at Honda. She was so excited to catch up with me, and the 2 years or whatever, how long since I saw her last. Hashem ordained that I should sit in Walmart in this godforsaken monstrosity of a store that makes my blood pressure go up, but it resulted in making a woman smile. Now, I can't tell you for sure that that's why God sent me to Walmart. Maybe he sent me there just to test my nervous system. And if that's the case, I'm not sure I passed the test. But in the process, I made someone smile. And then there was 2 people behind me online. And I was talking to this woman who I know from Honda, this elderly woman, about anti-Semitism. She asked me how I'm doing with the Jewish communities. And then I just randomly, I don't even know where it came from, I turned to the couple behind me, an elderly couple. So, you guys anti-Semites, or do you like Jews? And they're like, we like Jews. I'm like, okay, I just, these days it's worth asking, so I don't have to look over my shoulder. And they burst out laughing. We all had a big laugh. And I realized, wow, only in Montana you can get away with asking the people behind you. I'm just curious, are you anti-Semites or you like Jews? But my point is, Hashem puts us every day, in every moment, in the hard, in the easy, in the good, the bad, and the ugly. Every moment is ordained. And I'm with you. There are days, there are hours, there are minutes where he makes it a lot harder to see his presence there. But he does that on purpose. It's our job to figure out how to find him in those moments and find out what he's trying to teach us in those moments, or what he's trying to guide us to in those moments. And the entire story of Purim, the reason why Purim is such a joyous holiday, you think about it, the one holiday that's so joyous is the holiday where God's name isn't mentioned, because the greatest joy a person can experience in life is when you discover God through the hard work, not when it shows up on a silver platter. God showing up on a silver platter. If you're faithful because God showed up on a silver platter, it's not novel. Big whoop. Even an atheist can believe in God when you show up on a silver platter. But when you don't see God and you're not sure what he's up to, or what he's smoking, or why he's not showing up the way you want him to show up, or he is showing up, but he could have showed up a little better, it's that backing off and saying, hold on, what did the story of Purim teach me? Think about Esther. Think about Esther. Esther lost her parents. She was an orphan girl. She was raised by her older cousin. She had all the reasons to be mad at the world. And then the psycho king forces her to become the queen. She wasn't happy about it. He impregnated her. She ended up having a son, Darius, who eventually became a king, etc., a Jewish kid. But he had a very mixed understanding because he had a Jewish mother and a non-Jewish father. So he was a Persian king, but he was actually Jewish. The point is, she wasn't there happily. And one step after the other until she figured out that all of that, her being picked for her beauty, was not just random, because nothing is. It was ordained by Almighty God to the very last detail. And 23, 24, or maybe 20, maybe even 2,500 years later. No, I'm sorry. Purim was during the era between the first and second temple. So about 2,500 years. About 2,500, 2,400 years ago. For that many years, over 2 millennia, the Jewish people are celebrating Purim till today. You think that was random that she was in the palace? And nothing's random in your life either.
Something Pradas.
Huh?
Something Pradas. Whatever the divine.
Hashgacha pratis. Divine providence, 100%. But in the story of Purim, it was harder to recognize because so much of it was so hard to internalize. Annihilation, there's an anti-Semite, oh my gosh, Columbia, Harvard, they hate us, the UN, oh my gosh, the Jewish people, we're going to be fine. We'll make a holiday to celebrate the demise of the UN. There'll be another holiday. When the UN shuts down, the Jewish people will make another Yom Tov that will celebrate for the next 2,500 years. And you know what it says? Asidin kol hatzoyim, all the holidays are going to be annulled, except for the scroll. The scroll of Esther will remain. The holiday of Purim will remain. Because there'll never be a time, even when Mashiach comes, that we'll forget about the power of seeing the divine, seeing God within the realm of nature. But for that, you have to lift the veil, look beneath the surface, and recognize that God put you in this particular palace that seems miserable because your husband is psycho Achashverosh, and the people really don't like the Jews, and you end up being the savior and saving the entire Jewish nation from annihilation. So let that sink in. Be uplifted, be inspired. If you're not in Bozeman, find a Chabad house in your neighborhood and go celebrate Purim. And it should be, as we say in the Scroll of Esther, and we say every Saturday night in Havdalah, which comes from the Scroll of Esther, for the Jews there was gladness and joy and honor and glory. So Mahmoud Khalil and whatever that bozo from the UN and all of them together with Mahmoud Abbas and the guys, all of them, it's going to be like Yehudim v'simcha v'sasim v'kar. For the Jews, there will always be joy and gladness and honor and glory. And what happens to you guys? Wait till we tell you the rest of the story in chapter 9. Just read chapter 9 and 10 of the Megillah, and you'll know how this story ends in all its glory. Have a good night, a happy Purim. Next week is spring break. My children are off from school. We will not be in the state of Montana, so I don't know yet about class. Oh, you didn't know there was spring break? You did? So if you get, I'll try to keep you posted about class. I have to see what time zone I'm on. Either way, we'll keep you posted. Purim. Have an easy fast tomorrow. We'll see you back here in good health sooner than later. L'chaim.